Big 12 Radio, along with James Wesley. I'm Ari Temkin. And our full court press, the Modelo Big 12 basketball season recap, takes us to Stillwater, Oklahoma, and our friend Eric Bailey of the Tulsa World joining us here to talk Oklahoma State basketball. Eric, how are you?
Doing great. How are you guys doing?
Doing well, and want to get knee-deep into the basketball discussion with you. But first, something we haven't yet touched on, which is a pretty significant story out of Stillwater, Oklahoma State softball. They were traveling via bus to a game against Wichita State, and from what I've read, struck a pedestrian on I-35 and killed the pedestrian, who was, I guess, weaving in and out of traffic on I-35. Not a great idea. What can you tell us about this story?
Man, what a tough situation. They were going to a game up at Wichita State yesterday, and around noon, and they were probably about 30 minutes outside of Stillwater. Just got on I-35, just a mile up north on I-35 when there's a little interchange that you go up when you turn north toward Wichita State, and there was a lady who apparently was running in and out of traffic for a while on I-35, and the bus struck her and unfortunately killed her. Witnesses say she had been running in and out of traffic for a while, and what I heard was it's just been really traumatic, of course, for the players, for the staff, and unfortunately, we need to keep the victim and her family in
Right.
our prayers. And we need to keep, from what I've been told, it was real tough on all the players, of course, for the players and the staff. And yeah, I posted this on social media. Really, Kenny Gajewski, this has got to be really tough on him because he has to keep that team together. And Kenny, in getting to know Kenny, he's really a sensitive person, and he has to be strong for his team and his staff. He has to keep everyone together. I just can't imagine how tough and hard this is on him. And the driver, can you imagine being the driver and seeing, those buses? You see everything. Those buses, you've seen that all. And from what I've been told, they changed drivers right away. But to live with that and seeing that, that's got to be tough. So it's just a really unfortunate situation. They postponed the game from last night, of course, and the team stayed in Wichita last night, and they have a three-game series in Ames, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So they're on their way up to Ames now. But those kids, it's really bearing on them, and just keep them in your thoughts and prayers.
Yeah, well said, Eric, and thank you for adding that they are going to play this weekend. That was going to be my question: is kind of what does the recovery look like mentally for that team as they try to unite with one another. When it comes to, our series today in Oklahoma State men's basketball, a lot of guys are in the portal just like everywhere else, but they also have, some key pieces that were very quick to announce that they're coming back. So what's the outlook right now?
I really think, and this is the new normal. We're seeing team across the country. We're seeing rosters come and go, and I think fans, I think they're getting used to it. They're getting people. They're getting to know who's coming back, who's staying. The shock value isn't there like it was last year. Oklahoma State fans saw players leave, and every day just were shocked with people that left. I think that shock value is still. I think you're stunned now when some players announce they're leaving. You're not shocked like you were last year. I think you're more happy when you find players are staying rather than shocked when people are leaving. Oklahoma State learned that the players that are staying. I think when you learn that Kanye Clary is staying, that's a big recruiting get, and it is funny that you're recruiting players to stay now. And they learned that they're getting Ben Ahmed, the freshman center from last season, is staying. That's big for Oklahoma State. So I think that's big that they're getting now. They are losing a couple key players from last year that helped them. Victorious Miller announced that he is entering the portal. Another guard, Jalen Curry's leaving. Isaiah Coleman, who played a little bit last year too, he's leaving. Those are players that were contributors, but that's okay. I think you expected those players to leave. There's some give and take on this too. But all in all, I think that none of those players that are leaving, they were unexpected. Steve Lutz did a really good job with his recruiting class. He's got some really good players coming in. Right now, there hasn't been anything that's been unexpected. I think you cheer the players that are coming in. I think they're really doing well within the portal right now with the give and take.
Yeah, well said. What's the feeling right now with Steve Lutz in Stillwater?
They're making progress. I think it's not happening as fast as Oklahoma State fans have liked. I really think that they really wanted to be in the tournament in year two, but they're making progress. And Steve Lutz understands that. He knows that they need to be in the tournament. But again, it's better in year two than they're making progress. I guess that's the best way to put it. They're headed in the right direction, but it's not happening as fast as a lot of people like, including Steve Lutz. He knows that. They're a better team than they were last year, but it needs to happen faster. I think that's the key. And year three, they really need to be in the tournament. Now, in the portal era, it's hard to really establish that speed unless you really get those portal players to buy in and get there. It's harder to develop that progress than you could in years past where you built something and built a foundation and worked together. You got to build that faster with the team you put together. And that's the key. You got to really get these guys that you pull in, and when you do this, you got to build it faster. And I think a lot of coaches are learning that. But you got to give Steve Lutz credit for what he's done. When you put this combination, this recipe of players, when you put them together, you got to build it quick. And I think a lot of coaches are learning that.
Eric, is there any buzz about players that might be taking visits to Stillwater that you've seen that are guys that are maybe on Steve Lutz's radar for this portal cycle?
There's a lot of names out there. I mean, Steve Lutz has done a really good job. I mean, when you look at what he brought in last year and how he was able to get scorers, I think that's the big thing. There's a lot of names out there. What impressed me last year, let's talk about last year. What impressed me last year was he was able to get a lot of scorers on campus. He was able to bring a lot of scoring power to campus, and we saw that. I mean, they scored a ton of points this year. The key this year is to find more balance, because what hurt him when he brought a lot of scorers in, they were a really poor defensive team. I think there's an opportunity to go in there and find this year. He needs to find that balance, to find players that are a little better defenders, and you kind of mix it up a little bit. You need to find that big man in there to really help kind of ease things a little bit. There's a couple of names out there. I can't say his name because I'm terrible with names. Supposedly they're bringing a center in from Kansas. Is it Flory Badunga?
Flory Badunga.
Yeah, from Kansas. They're interested in him. There's a shooting guard from Washington State, Thomas Thasterson. There's and then you go and you look at some of these other mid-major guys. There's a point guard from Merrimack. There's a Florida Atlantic guard. There's there's Sam Houston Ford. There's guys from across the country. You look at some of the big power four or the big schools, and then you go mid majors. You got to kind of spread out. And are you going to get all these guys? I don't know, but you got to spread your wings, and you can't focus on everybody because you're not the only one looking for these schools or for these players. You have to spread out because you're not gonna bat 1,000 with these guys. That's the key, because everyone's looking for the same thing. fortunately for Oklahoma State, they did really good in the transfer portal last year, but they have to do well. They really do. And a key for Oklahoma State, what we saw last year is, do they have the money? That's always been. We talked about it with football last year. Do they have the finances this year? We're going to find out.
Yeah, well said. What do you think was the biggest factor to the not making the tournament this year for Oklahoma State, and is it fixable?
I think the thing is, it's getting those quality wins, getting those chances. And
Yeah.
in Big 12, you do have those opportunities. They just need to stack more of them. They need to get those big wins, and they just weren't able to. And they were close in some of those games. But every night you play in the Big 12, you got a chance to get those big victories. You got a chance to beat those Houstons, to beat those Kansases. You get a chance. They did get a big one against BYU at home, but they weren't able to do that. And they need to do that. They need to find a way to get those big victories, and that's something that they weren't able to do. And I know Steve Lutz was getting tired of coming to press conferences and talking about being close. Well, it's getting over the hump and getting those big wins where the selection committee can come in and say, well, Oklahoma State has a chance to get it. They have these quad one wins, and that's the next step for Oklahoma State. And they need to go into March saying, well, we have these victories, and they need to go in there and say, we have this on our resume.
Well, I love that Steve Lutz, after the Wichita State NIT loss, was very direct in that our goal is to make the tournament, and to do that, we've got to find guys that are more physical, tougher, defend and rebound every single night. So what that looks like to me is Oklahoma State's going to have a complete overhaul, most notably on the front line.
Hmm. Yeah, and that's something. I like Steve Lutz a lot. I really, really do, and he makes no excuses. There's been 3 or 4 press conferences where he says, "Guys, we got to look ourselves in the mirror." And when he starts a statement like that, that tells you a lot about accountability. And he says it's not just players, it's coaches, and that always impresses me. And he says we got to be tougher. It's not just one. We got to have that need to, and that always impresses me. And that's it. It's toughness. He says we got to be tougher, and he sees that. He understands that, and that's always impressed me about Steve Lutz. He's really, really good at that, and I'm just impressed with him as a coach. And he's a winner. He's won everywhere he's been, and he understands and accepts the challenges of Big 12 basketball.
Yeah, well said. Eric Bailey, Tulsa World. Eric, you're the best. Appreciate your time. You look great, buddy.
All right, guys. I appreciate it a bunch. You have a good weekend, okay?
Thanks, Eric.
You as well, my friend. Great talking, as always, with Eric Bailey as we break down Oklahoma State. Also, the tragedy involving Oklahoma State softball. Just a insane story. And, and for Kenny Gajewski and that crew, you hope they're able to overcome this, because that has to be emotionally, can't even imagine.
Yeah, getting the details from Eric there, it was just outside of Stillwater when they popped onto I-35. That is a very, people are driving very fast on that highway, and a pedestrian that's weaving in and out of traffic, crossing the road, something's off there. Incredibly sad story. And I'm a little surprised that Oklahoma State is playing their series this weekend against Iowa State up in Ames. I thought maybe the Wichita State game wouldn't be the only one that was postponed. I can't imagine what that program is going through. But sometimes an event like this can really unite a team. And everything that they're going to have to work through together, leaning on one another.
That's James Wesley. I'm Ari Tepkin. It's Big 12 today. Big 12 radio on the way next. In the final whistle, vanilla or chocolate? Major question right now in college football. You'll understand why next. It's Big 12 today, presented by Modelo. Heard on TuneIn, watched on Big 12 Studios.